from the J.C. Newman Cigar Studios in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome to the Smokin Tabacco Show with your hosts, Matt Tobacco and Smokin Nicole.
All right.
So I don't know what happened, but we lost our our monitoring audio, so I couldn't hear the end of the recorded intro. So I don't know what happened.
But
there.
welcome, everyone.
But welcome to the Smokin Tabacco Show, everybody. My name is Matt Tobacco from SmokinTabacco.com. I am joined once again by my beautiful fiance, Smokin Nicole. And tonight, the Authority is here with us. That's right, the Cigar Authority. Barry Stein of the Cigar Authority, or Barry Beliveau, depending on who we ask. He's here with us to present us with the authority on information in terms of cigars. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you guys having me. It's good seeing you guys virtually, and I look forward to our time spent together.
Oh, absolutely. Likewise. I mean, out of all the guests on the show, you're one of the only ones that's actually within a quick drive away from us. So seeing you virtually is kind of strange.
You had Weller on the table before, so now I'm kind of upset that I wasn't invited to do it live.
Oh, that's true. Although we've never had anyone do it live with us, which was something we got to try in the future.
Just John once, I think.
Yeah, just John one time. Does that really count, though? Because, I mean, he's kind of like part of the internal. We've never had, like, an exterior guest who's not affiliated.
That's true, but I think we're going to burst that in a couple weeks because we have to do our show live from TPE.
That's
so
true.
We're going to be there.
Someone's going to jump on.
know.
Someone will jump on. No, but, we're really excited to have Barry on the show. Barry, you've been in the industry for a little while now, and I know you've seen a lot of things. Things come and go. Things change. So we're really excited to kind of get your opinion on kind of a lot of different things. How you feel about where the cigar industry has gone as a whole, where cigar media has gone. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's start off by talking about what we're smoking. Barry, as our guest, what are you smoking?
I am smoking a Atabey Brewhouse.
Pulled out the big guns.
Pulling out the big guns, and it has an Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper, but binder and fill are a top secret, and it's made by Nelson Alfonso Selected Tobacco, and it has a retail price of $27.
And you can find that at
twoguyscigars.com.
Sorry, I cut you off. I tried to steal your thunder. I am going to be lighting up, not the exact size, but the All Saints St. Francis, the Robusto. Now, the Toro was the Cigar Authority Cigar of the Year. I'm smoking the Robusto. This cigar retails for $11.59 per cigar, or get a box for $227.99. And Nicole, what are you smoking?
So I'm smoking the McAuliffe A in honor of the kickoff of McAuliffe Madness.
Ooh, that's right. It's that time.
I'm smoking the Toro. It is $8.39 a stick, and for a bundle, you can get one for $149.99 at twoguyscigars.com.
That is, Barry. What is that?
If you're too far away from a brick and mortar retailer that carries it, try twoguyscigars.com. That's the number 2, guyscigars.com.
Oh my God!
Oh wow!
We just.
It was really nice to hear you say that, like on a different show. Oh man, that's how the Cigar Authority kicks off every week.
Yeah.
Actually, you read that twice during the Cigar Authority.
Yeah, twice, and I still fumble over it multiple times.
We do have quite a few comments coming in. Barry's still at work today.
Virtually. He's at work. He's virtually at work. Hey, someone's got to keep that shop going.
Say again?
Said someone's going to keep that shop going.
If they can't let me stay after hours, the inventory would have a major issue because I'd be smoking all the profits.
Yeah.
I think this is my 9th cigar today.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. But no, that was great. I was really looking forward to that because it's a two guys segment. I got you here. I knew you were gonna read it off. That was awesome. But speaking of two guys, the Cigar Authority, that's where you are now. But that's not where you've always been. What was kind of the beginnings of your entry into the cigar media, or the business as a whole?
So I originally lived in Brooklyn, New York, and I was friends with a guy by the name of Eric that used to walk past where he hung out. And he's like, oh, you should come to this cigar shop. And I had quit smoking cigarettes. I had like pneumonia. And I was like, I don't know if I want to stop smoking again. But he convinced me to show up at the cigar shop, and I got to the cigar shop, and I never left. Uh, Eventually, I bought into it. I was partners with a retired detective. And then from there, I went to work for a little bit as a subcontractor for America's Most Wanted. Uh, and while that was going on, I got invited to write for a magazine that was based in Germany. And somebody would take my articles and translate them into German and print them. And right around at the same time, my private investigation gig started taking off, and we sold the cigar shop. But I missed the cigar shop. I missed the camaraderie of people from different walks of life. And I went to a cigar event in upstate New York where I ran into Sam Lucia, who was he was the person associated with Nub at the time. And we were smoking cigars, and I was being a wise ass saying, yeah, I get notes of this, that, and the other thing. And he goes, oh, you should start a blog. I had no idea what a blog was. So I did some research, and one of the original bloggers back then, they were Jerry Cruz, Brian Hewitt, and Walt White from Stogie Review. And I was like, you know what, I could do this. So I started a cigarsmoker.com, and selling advertising on the space definitely helped offset the money I was spending on cigars. So it became a little bit of a hobby, and eventually I was recruited by Miami Cigar to do marketing for that company, and did some work for La Aurora as well. And after 6 years in Miami, I decided I missed the Northeast. They decided that they were going to hire an outside company, that they were going to start streamlining their payroll. Eventually, they would get rid of their reps and become strictly in-house. But I took a job in Connecticut. The guy that hired me in Connecticut, a month into it, decided he couldn't afford to pay me. No hard feelings there, because everything worked out. And things happen in life for a reason. Somebody told me to reach out to David Garofalo over at Two Guys. He knew what was going on, because I'm pretty vocal on social media and shared everything that was going on. And he said, come on up for an interview. Gave me an Atabey, gave me the exact cigar I'm smoking now. Thought it was phenomenal. There wasn't a band on it, so I didn't know what I was smoking. And he basically hired me on the spot. And I've been with TwoGuysCigars.com and the Cigar Authority since.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing story. So you've kind of been all around a little bit. You've kind of been in multiple different facets of the industry, with blogging, media. You've done, marketing. You've done the retail side, with Two Guys. I know that, you're one of the fun things about Barry is that comes up on the Cigar Authority. And if you're a Cigar Authority watcher, you know about this.
And if you're not, you should be.
Is when Barry has his gripe of the week with like his orders and stuff. Like, I'll never forget, there was one episode when you guys addressed the issue when people were they were writing into you about like shipping and UPS, and it was right on the cigar, and you're like, listen, I can't control UPS. Like, I send your orders out, and you guys are all yelling at me like, where's my shit? And I'm like, I put it in the box and send it, and then it's out of my hands. So
yeah, we even had post last year. In the middle of the pandemic, it's during Christmas. Christmas was a nightmare last year. Not 2021, but 2020. And we actually posted a video of the trucks lined up outside the Indianapolis distribution center, showing how bad things were. But people were blaming us, like as if I was driving the orders to the house. And I sympathize, because, what should have taken 2 or 3 days was taken 2 or 3 weeks at best. So it became frustrating because, we were all dealing with the COVID lockdown. Everybody gets muscles behind the screen on a phone. They don't have to look at the person in the face. And it was really beginning to weigh on me. I mean, I was called every name under the book. You try not to vent to the customer, because the customer's always right. But the Cigar Authority, it was brought up a couple of times, and I unleashed, and I have no filter. I say what's ever on my mind. And
yeah, that's true.
Thankfully, TwoGuysCigars.com has the greatest customers in the world, and they all eventually understood what was going on. It became a major news story about the delays, and thankfully everything worked out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to control shipping. It's really out of any business's hands. I mean, the best you can do is the way you prepare, you package it well, you try to get them out as quickly as possible, but then you've done your job. I mean, it becomes the carrier's problem after that, and especially during this pandemic. We have seen a lot of delays in all kinds of shipping, especially parcel and package shipping like FedEx, UPS, even the mail service. Heaven forbid, that's one of the worst ones. But it's hard, and of course, who gets the flack from it? The business owner, not the carrier. I mean, they do here and there when they like really mess up and they damage boxes and stuff. But
you call 1-800-ASK-USPS or whatever the UPS number is. You got to go through, press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish, press 3 for French, and then you got to go through more automated, and you can't get a person. So I get the frustration, and thankfully this year was a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. Any bounce back from that is always great. But aside from the retail stuff, so kind of back to kind of just you and what you've done, like we talked about, and like you've told us in your history there, you've been around for a while. You've seen a lot of things. You've seen things come and go. In the current state of the industry, we'll go with the industry first. In the current state of the industry as a whole, with all of your experience, how do you feel about it? Are you happy with the way the industry is? Are you not happy? Do you have any specific gripes?
I'm happy with the way the industry's going, but I think people have to be prepared for, if you smoke a Robusto, the next 6 months, you might have a hard time getting the Robusto, and you might have to go to the Toro or vice versa. I think there's going to be some growing pains because of COVID still going on, and we're now in another influx of cases. And there's been rumblings in the industry about, it's going to be difficult to get product. And there's some people that think that, we can't keep up. What were we at, like 300 million cigars shipped into the U.S. or something the third quarter?
Roughly, yeah.
And I can't see the industry sustaining that, especially when factories aren't at 100% capacity. So the next 6 months could be difficult.
One of the biggest things kind of related to that topic is, and you can speak on this as well, around this time every year, a lot of the media outlets, specifically Half Wheel, because I feel like they go digging for this information a little bit more than the rest of us do, which is something that Coop and I will discuss on Spare Notes this weekend. But the price increases. You see if you follow Half Wheel, you follow media or whatever, you'll see, when the new year turns, the articles. La Polina raises prices. Tatuaje raises prices. Blah, 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 blah. And you're seeing a lot of that right now, and it's all prices being raised. One of the very few who hasn't raised prices was Gurkha, with the exception of their sampler packs and the bags. But their regular core line, they're not increasing price, which is kind of rare. Especially right now. You're seeing a lot of people raise prices. And I think Dave talked about this, and you guys talked about this on the Cigar Authority on one episode recently. This really should not be a shock. I mean, you're going to see prices go up right now, especially with everything that's going on.
It's across all markets.
Yeah.
It's not just cigars.
It is, and you see it with cigar manufacturers. One year they'll raise prices, one year they won't, and it seems like every other year. It's usually 2-3%. This year we've seen some companies go as high as 10% increase. Fact is, it's hard to get people to work right now, and you got to pony up more money, and unfortunately that gets passed on to the consumer. And the majority of people that I've spoken to are understanding of it. I have noticed some people are starting to stock up right now. They're generally you don't see 2, 3, 4 box buys in January when it's so cold out. You'll see that in the warmer months. So I am seeing some people start to stock up now before the price increase.
Right.
But I was shocked. I don't ever remember seeing so many companies raise their prices 10%. And the average has always been 2 to 4, 3 to 5, but I've never seen, 5 or 6 companies go as high as a 10% increase. That's crazy, and on a $12 stick, all right, granted, it's only $1.20, but it's definitely a lot more than the 40 cents it normally was.
Right. And that adds up, especially over time. Very rarely do people actually lower their prices, with the exception of Nick Perdomo, especially during the S-chip, which is a whole nother thing in itself. when the S chip tax went into effect, and everyone had to affect their pricing, and a lot of prices went up. Nick Perdomo lowered it, as you guys talk about on the Cigar Authority with
Yeah.
the Perdomo ad, but that's true. That's actually a real point. Nick Perdomo lowered his prices during the S chip tax, which is an amazing feat to pull off. But normally, prices go up and then they stay there, and then they keep going up over time. So, like you said, even if it's 40 cents or it's $1.20. It might not seem a lot now, but that's just going to keep building over time. And then your $12 stick you like now, 5 years from now, it's going to be a lot more than that.
But then they price themselves out of the market. So at some point, there's a...
Barry, what would you say in response to that?
At some point, you can't keep raising it.
Yeah.
So this week I have we have the versus segment each week, and we do the question of the week. And this week I posed to our listeners, and there's still time to get your answer in over to cigarauthority.com. But I asked people, how much will the price increase affect your buying habits? Will you still smoke the same amount of your favorite cigars? Will you smoke less of your favorite cigars? Will you still smoke the same amount but look for a less expensive alternative? And I don't want to give away the answer to it, but I don't think it's going to be as damaging as we think it will be based upon the answers that I've received so far. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of hear that myself. It's always great to hear from people and what they're thinking and what they're feeling.
See, look at it. A cigar that goes up $1.20. If it's a 1 hour smoke, you're talking about 2 cents a minute.
Yep.
Phone sex back in the day was $1.50 a minute. So is 2 cents really that bad? This is more enjoyable. So.
Tom Criswell Jr. from YouTube says to us, answer is same amount and bend over. Oh, man, that's great. Tom, thanks for watching with us tonight.
I think that's my
that's
that's
great.
my answer too, Tom. I'm not giving up cigars.
In terms of the media specifically, kind of the same question. How do you feel about where cigar media was and kind of where it's gone to now?
So I've been at it for 21 years since I started in 2001. Got my cats fighting down here, but since I started in 2001. But back then it was a smaller community, It was Stogie guys, it was Stogie Review, it was
like strictly blogging, right?
Yeah, it was strictly blogging. Vlogging didn't really exist. Jerry Cruz did a lot of video reviews, and I believe he was the pioneer of the video review. But it was such a smaller community that we all knew each other. We would all reach out to each other, and there's some old school guys still left, like Ben Lee is still around. But now I feel like the media has grown between, the Instagram live person, Facebook live, YouTube live, podcast. It's so spread out now that I feel like the media isn't as close-knit as it used to be. But the content that's being put out now compared to back then, I think the manufacturers have finally seen the power of cigar media. So they've gotten behind it more, so the information's become more readily available. But I miss that close community that we had back in the day. Mm-hmm. So it's changed over the years, without a doubt.
Do you think that there's too many fish in the pond, or do you think that it's good for the growth of, kind of like with the content?
So glass half empty, glass half full. For me, I think there's too many fish in the pond. It's kind of impossible to keep track of everybody at this point. Mm-hmm. But having this many people only furthers the message of cigars. With this many people blogging, you're going to see this many different opinions. You're going to see this many different cigars. You're going to see this many different press releases, this many different interviews. So for the cigar industry, that's very good.
Yeah, especially
for the new cigar person, that's phenomenal.
Especially
for the old school guy, I get lost a little bit. So sorry to cut you off.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say, especially when it comes to all the cigar legislative stuff too, in the organizations like Cigar Rights of America, Premium Cigar Association, Cigar Association of America, Cigar Rights of the World, which is a newer one that's starting to gain some steam. I think my opinion is I would kind of echo what you said too. There is a lot out there, but at the same time, the more people there are, the more that's getting out. And I think especially that's why, we're not the only ones that do it, but I always try to really bring up on the shows or whatever we're doing, or just online on the website at smokintabacco.com when we do, stories and press releases and stuff like that, PCA stuff and all the right stuff, because I feel like it is something that most consumers don't really understand or fully grasp, and that's not their fault either. They don't have the information because they're not getting it. But now I'm starting to feel, especially in the last couple of years, where a lot more has emerged. You're starting to see that stuff get out more online, where the consumers can really access that and see and read and understand like what kind of goes on behind the curtain that they may not realize that impacts the lifestyle that they enjoy.
That was the issue with Cigar Rights of America back in the day when they first started. I remember running into Glenn Loop at Cigar Inn in New York City, and all the older people I smoked cigars with, these taxes are never going to go up. The sky is falling. There's not going to be a smoking ban. They don't know what they're talking about. So the average consumer didn't really have their finger on the pulse, so to speak. If we had the media presence that we have now when Cigar Rights of America started, there would be more people involved, and it wouldn't have fallen strictly on the manufacturers to fund it. But, like New York City, you can't smoke in Times Square. You can't smoke within 10 feet of a building entrance. There are people in New York that thinks, it's not going to go any further than that. But then you look at Washington State and you can't smoke in a cigar shop. You have to be outside the cigar shop to smoke. But the average consumer doesn't know that. The online guy makes up maybe 10% at best of the cigar marketplace. So you get 90% of the people that aren't really in the know. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, that 10% was probably 2%. So having this many media people has helped spread the word, maybe too little, too late, or too late, too little, or whatever the saying is. But it definitely hurt the cigar industry in the beginning that there wasn't enough people getting the message out, and maybe we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now with the FDA. There is a positive to the cigar media. Unfortunately, a lot of the old school retailers didn't really see that. They saw us more of a hindrance. And thankfully, you had people like David Garofalo who fought for cigar bloggers to get into the trade show. You had Jose Blanco, who was La Aurora at the time. Now he's with Arturo Fuente, that fought for the cigar blogger. So it's always been an uphill battle for us. But the manufacturers saw how important we were to getting the message out. And I think a lot of retailers are seeing it now, too. There are some old school retailers that still don't comprehend what we're doing or see us as a hindrance. And there are some people that damage what we're trying to do. There are the trick-or-treaters at the trade show.
Absolutely.
But I think for the most part, the cigar bloggers are an important voice. Well, and I say bloggers, but it's all cigar media. And I'm showing my age by always saying bloggers. But we're important with getting the word out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing. Many of my news stories, like tonight's news segment, which we'll get to in a second, involves PCA. And I purposely try to pick those because, everyone sees the press release where, Pete Johnson ships, blah, 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 and, Arturo Fuente, released this, and everyone sees that, and they all get excited, new cigars are coming. And that's great, and I'm not taking away from that. I love them too. But I always try to make sure that I'm highlighting stuff that doesn't normally get highlighted with the PCA and legislative stuff, especially when it comes to the FDA. Because whether or not anyone realizes it, we have a lot of enemies as an industry, but the FDA is really public enemy number one. I mean, they're the ones that create the regulations. We've had tax stuff. We've had substantial equivalence, which is a whole thing that we've covered in little bits over time, and that was a huge thing that is kind of gone for now, but it's not really dead. But for right now, we're okay with it. And that can change. FDA, the head of the FDA is changing. Lots of mysteries around, who's going to step into that role. So this is all very important stuff. And I try to keep everyone fresh on all that as it comes out.
Not to be doom and gloom, but we're the guy on death row, and right now we have our stay of execution. Eventually, something's going to happen, and you hope that Rubio and everybody who's put together all this legislative language to protect the cigar industry, hopefully that gives us what we need, and this goes away. But there's always that concern that the other shoe's going to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Will mail order cigars eventually go away? Will the FDA completely control the cigar industry where nothing that came out after 2007 will exist? Right now that coin's flipping in the air. Which side it lands on remains to be seen. And I'm preparing for the worst. I'd rather prepare for the worst and have the best happen than prepare for the best and not be able to deal with the worst.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I think that's a pretty universal message that most of us try to really say and spread, is prepare for the worst but hope for the best. And with that, I do want to hit our news segment tonight, which Nicole will lead us into.
Yes. So, cigar industry news brought to you by McAuliffe Cigars. Now, McAuliffe also just kicked off their McAuliffe Madness brackets. So, I'm going to throw one up on screen here. Boom, so you guys can see it. So this is the McAuliffe Madness bracket. It is very similar to March Madness. It is a prediction challenge, so you predict what the number one cigar is going to be. It is free to fill out. You can go to McAuliffeCigars.com and go fill one out. You have to be an ambassador, which is their free social club. You get a cool coin, so please join that as well if you haven't already. If you fill this out and your prediction is correct, there are prizes for the best 1, 2, and 3 brackets, and there's also a prize for the worst bracket. I wonder what that prize is going to be.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fun.
I kind of want to fill one out now just to see if I can get the worst bracket, but we'll see. If you haven't done this, it is a great thing to participate in, and it's so much fun. There is an actual live vote that goes on with the McAuliffe Ambassador Facebook group, so definitely check that out. And bring on the news. What's going on this week?
Some more news out of the Premium Cigar Association. The Premium Cigar Association announced earlier this week a new mission statement as well as an expansion of its board of directors from 15 to 19. The 4 new seats will be made available to associate members, expanding the number of associate members on the board from 1 to 5. Associate members include members from the manufacturing community. According to the PCA, these changes came as a result of PCA Board's strategic planning session that was held to assess the current state of the industry and the PCA itself, and how to leverage the association's greater impact in the years ahead. Barry, since you're here, I'm gonna throw this right to you, and I'm gonna ask you your opinion on these changes of the PCA.
Going for 15 and 19. I haven't really read up enough on it. It would be unfair of me to have an opinion. I'm sure Dave would have something to say with it. He was an original board member. So I appreciate you asking my insight. I don't know enough about the topic, so I'm going to abstain.
Well, we have a comment in the chat, so let me ask you your opinion on this one. Maybe this will be a little bit easier for you. Tom Criswell Jr. says, more board members equals slower change. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree?
It depends on the board members. If you bring in some younger board members that have different insights and different views, they're going to bring something to the table that might be overlooked. So, yeah, more people equal longer debate, but more people equals more ideas. And there's nothing wrong with more ideas.
So I can tell you that 2 of the new board spots will be filled by Christian Aroa of CLE Cigar Company and Alan Rubin of Alec Bradley. Aroa and Rubin join Mike Condor from Crowned Heads, who is the current associate board member. The term for these 3 seats will be through July 2024. The remaining 2 open seats will be filled via the open elections process PCA initiated last year and will be for a 3-year term through July 2025.
I would like to see PCA put a media member on that board, because
Really
you have retailers represented, you have manufacturers represented. You need a media member represented, and it doesn't have to be online media. It could be somebody from Cigar Journal. It could be Reinhold Widmeyer. I'd even be open to Savona or somebody from CA. Or even, you had David Garofalo in as a retailer, bring him in as an inaugural media member. it'd be difficult for him to switch hats because he's going to look at it from both sides. But if the industry is made up of three assets of people, and I feel one of the assets aren't being represented, and we're paying dues, so why shouldn't we have a voice?
Absolutely, that's true. I mean, everyone pays the dues to be part of the association.
Even media members.
Even media, you know, we pay our dues as well. You know, which also the dues help fund the PCA, so it's not completely, you know, horrible. It does go somewhere, but at the same time, you know, if you're paying to play, you know, your voice should be heard too. I think that's a really good point, and I think that's something that Coop and I will bring up on the Spare Note show on Saturday night.
I mean, look, you have school boards bringing students onto the school boards, and you know, granted, it's a non-voting member, but at least they're getting their voice heard. And even if it started out with the media in a non-voting voice, I feel like somebody should be representing what we do.
Yeah, I mean, we have a comment from the chat from Ross S. Blacker who says, "What about the consumer?" Which is, I mean, that's a good point too. I mean, you have someone who's buying the cigars have their voice heard too.
Yeah, see, it's not really a consumer group. You know, it's a trade association, and you could say media is a trade. People are advertising with us, we're writing about them. They tried to do the consumer day at the trade show. That went nowhere fast, and you know, I'm lucky enough where I could go there as a member in the media. If I wasn't in the media, would I love to go as a consumer? Absolutely. Having been there as a retailer, a member of the media, and a manufacturer, opening up to Consumer Day would be a logistical nightmare.
Right.
Even if you did it on the last half day of the show, well, the retailers are spent, you know. You're talking about 10 hours on the trade show floor because you're there before it opens and you're there after it closes, and then you're taking out your customers for dinner, and then you're hanging out at the Circle Bar closing more deals. You're talking about 18-hour days. You're lucky if you're getting 6 hours of sleep at night. And, you know, and some of the bloggers like Coop could attest that he's doing all of that, and then he's going back to his hotel room and he's writing about it, and he's getting an hour or two of sleep. So to deal with the consumer, who's the most important thing to the whole cigar industry, because without the consumer, there's no industry, there's nobody supporting the industry. It's just, you know, it's not set up for the consumer. There are consumer events. So, you know, I don't think the consumers would have a place on the board. And it's not a knock on the consumer, so please don't think I'm picking on you or putting you down. It would just be a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, we have another comment in the chat from Tom Criswell who says, maybe this should be a dedicated media day, then leave the biz guys alone to do biz. So what I will say to that myself, and all three of us have been to the trade show, interesting and valid point. However,
Not enough time.
Not enough time. From the experience, I mean, even if there was 4 days of just for the media, I mean, on a normal show year, I mean, you still probably won't get to every booth.
We did, I mean, last year we went to the show. It was our first show. It was reduced, so the footprint of the amount of people who actually had booths was much less than years prior. And
which I would put in as an anomaly year for now.
Yeah. And we covered maybe like 60 booths over 4 or 5 days.
4 days.
So
well, 3.5 really.
So it's really tricky. It's hard just, you know, flagging down the right people to get interviews. We set up appointments for the most part. You know, many organized people who are there. We do appointments so that we can just go in, get our stuff done at our time, and then leave them be. And that works best, but then some people don't make them, and you have to chase them down, and there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah,
I mean, there was that story this year that came out, and, you know, I don't remember who it was, and that's a good thing, so I don't mention them. But, you know, there was a manufacturer working on a pretty significant deal with a customer, and a media personality or an influencer, I believe it was, came in, cut them right off, prevented the sale from happening. The person left the booth, and they left the trade show without making their order. That cost that manufacturer tens of thousands of dollars at least.
Yep.
As much as I don't want to say they need to do a better job vetting members of the media, they need to do a better job vetting members of the media.
Well, and just to touch upon that, the bigger issue was that that specific influencer or person didn't pay their media dues, and they were in on a badge, and they shouldn't have been
Yeah.
given that badge from a different manufacturer. So that's a whole nother issue. Is that they didn't pay their dues and they shouldn't have been there. They didn't work for that manufacturer. So how did they get the badge? And that's a whole nother
Yes.
issue in itself. So
And that's been going on since
Yeah.
The dawn of time.
I was a manufacturer, and I'm sure it happened when it was RTDA. I remember customers going with shop owners, and it affects the flow of business.
yeah.
Yeah, and like you said in the beginning, it's a trade organization, it's a trade show, it's a business trade show, and look, there's a lot of events all around the country all year where people
TPE
can
is
go.
open to consumers. That's coming up. I mean,
But without getting into too much of that, that's not what this is about. It's just kind of, I to be honest with you, I got so fucking sidetracked with this whole thing.
The
Went off on a
natural flow of conversation.
Yeah, it happens. So, but not to get into all of that. But I mean, it's some interesting points were made, and that's that. But another thing I wanted to ask you about, Barry, kind of getting away from the news. I know you weren't on the Cigar Authority this past weekend, but Jonathan and Dave and Ed, obviously Ed was there as well. They did a kind of a review of a lot of the top 25 cigar lists that are currently going around the industry. So I know you weren't really part of that conversation, so I was interested to get your opinion on kind of that whole situation and kind of how you feel about. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the different lists. Today, for those who don't know, Cigar Aficionado, who's arguably in the industry the biggest list, if you ask most people, that's who they'll say. Even though I think the Cigar Authority did it first, if I'm not mistaken. At least that's what Dave
1992.
claims too, 1992.
Ooh.
But
Almost 30 years.
they
30
announced that the
years.
number one cigar this year was the Padron 1964 Torpedo Natural. It's the Cigar Aficionado Cigar of the Year.
It's a safe bet, and I can't remember a time when Padron wasn't in the top 10 in Cigar Aficionado. And Brett Fry he's a great brick and mortar retailer down in Virginia, Tobaccoology. He reached out to me this week, and he said, all right, last year you told me what cigar year is going to be. Tell me what cigar of the year this year is going to be. And last year the list was leaked, so we all knew 2 weeks prior to the release what was going to be where on the list. But I'm going to break my arm and pat myself on the back. I had Monte Cristo at number 2 and the Padron Torpedo at number 1. It's a safe bet. The way Cigar Aficionado works is, you got to kiss the ring, and Rafael Nadal is making great cigars right now with Altadis, and he has his hands involved in the footprint. And the Monte Cristo 1935, great stick. It was a contender for Cigar of the Year with us at the Cigar Authority. But he knows how to work the system. He's always in New York. He's always getting together with the guys, out of sight, out of mind. He's staying in their eyes. So you knew he was going to be somewhere in the top 10. Once the top 5 hit, you knew he was going to be in the top 3. So that didn't surprise me. And, there's a Padron Facebook group, or at least there was, and it was Padron 31233112. And that's all their rankings at the time that the group was created. They've always been a fan. Cigar Aficionado has always been a fan of Padron, and rightfully so. They make some of the best sticks on the market. They're consistent year in and year out. But Craig Vanderslice made a great point on Facebook. They cater to 90% of the cigar industry. 90% of the cigar industry doesn't know from your Cigar of the Year on the Crown 10. They never heard of it. They don't know from our Cigar of the Year, All Saints cigars. They'd never heard it. So they cater to their masses, and maybe they should be expanding the footprint of the cigar industry instead of staying with the old favorites and the old school cigar guys. But knowing what that magazine's about, it was a given that Padron was going to be in the top 10. And as the list dwindled further and further, you knew they were going to be 1 or 2.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with the Padron thing too. I mean, they make some of the best stuff. They're consistent. Really great quality. A lot of people will joke with you that a lot of the Padron sticks visually, they look a little rough and uncut. But when you cut them and you smoke them and you taste them, there's very few cigars that really can hold a candle to those. I mean, they are so precise. They're on point. Great quality tobacco. The blends, the complexity, everything about them is just phenomenal. So it's not really a shock to see them at the top of that list. Having said that, in terms of some of the other lists that you have seen, were you surprised by some of the placements of certain cigars on other lists that you have seen?
Yeah, I was. There was a cigar that was Cigar of the Year on a major blog that I was surprised to see at number one. I don't know if it would have been in my top 20. It was a good cigar. I'm not going to name names. I haven't been drinking long enough.
Come on, just knock it back. It's fine.
And then you have guys that write a review or they name a cigar of the year that nobody smoked. And are you basing your review off of a trade show sample, or are you trying to be like, I want to be the coolest kid on the block? I'm going to name a cigar that nobody else is going to name. And you know what? It worked for him because they talked about it on the Cigar Authority. We're talking about it on Smokin Tabacco. So it got people talking about him, but everybody and their mother's putting out a top 10 list. And Coop had this great point, once again, on the same thread as Craig Vanderslikes, saying that, lost my train of thought. He's saying that what favoritism.
Yep.
Was Saka nice to this guy that I'm going to put Saka number one? Yeah, it's human nature. Everybody wants to feel important, and Saka does a great job with the media, stroking their ego and getting the love, and a lot of the love he deserves. But how can you name a cigar of the year a cigar that nobody smoked?
I think there needs to be more transparency with people's criteria, for one. And at the end of the day, everyone's doing their own thing so they can create whatever criteria. But, as long as it's clearly labeled, I feel like, that's a better way to go about it. I mean, us specifically, the cigar had to have come out in the last year.
Well, the biggest part of it, too, is most of those lists are built based on the reviews of the cigars that those publications have done throughout the year. And it's usually done by the highest ranked cigars in terms of review, such as Cigar Coop. And then, of course, there's other factors, too, like how long has it been on the market? When did it go on the market? I know Coop's rule is it has to be on store shelves the day before that year's Premium Cigar Association trade show starts. It can't come out at the end of the year and win Cigar of the Year. It needs to also, he doesn't just take in the cigar itself, he takes in its sales performance and kind of all of that.
Consistency.
It's consistency. There's a lot of factors that are built into it too. It's not just the reviews, but I would say that's the core component.
But see, the good sites, they follow a criteria. The person that named Paladin de Saka the cigar of the year, I don't think they had a criteria. It's almost like, what can I name number one that's going to get me the most attention versus what cigar deserves cigar of the year. It almost seems like the list was put together haphazardly without paying attention to anything on the market. Because if you did base it upon a sample that was sent to you in December or a sample that was handed to you in July, that's not a fair representation to judge Cigar of the Year off of. The Paladin de Saka, I smoked 3 of them. It's a limited edition or limited production. Who knows when we're going to see them again? Will it be as good as it was with that one sample that you had and then smoke it again June, July, or August? So, it's like saying, I'm going to smoke one cigar out of a box and I'm going to give that cigar 100, which I have not been shy to do on the Cigar Authority. I've given Atabey 100. I've given Byron 100. On a CigarSmoking.com, I gave Padron Principe Natural 100. These are cigars I would be comfortable smoking nothing but them the rest of my life. How can you say a cigar is Cigar of the Year when it hasn't been out long enough to have more than one sample? And let's say they were lucky enough that Saka sent them 5. You're talking about 5 controlled samples, not purchasing it at brick and mortar, not purchasing it online. To me, it just doesn't seem valid to give a cigar that you haven't been able to retest at a later date Cigar of the Year.
So we have a couple of comments in the chat from Mark Van Right. Mark, thanks for being here with us again. Does he think, I assume this question is for you, does he think that more manufacturers will follow Southern Draw cigars directly involving the consumer in what new cigars are produced?
No. And the reason why I'm going to say that, and the owner of Southern Drawer, he's a gentleman. He's a great guy. The couple of times I've met him, I've enjoyed being in his company. But he doesn't have the lineage that a lot of these cigar companies have. And a guy like George Padron, who grew up on the cigar industry, isn't going to ask a consumer, what should I blend next? A guy like Arturo Fuente, isn't going to do that himself. You can go on and on and on. You can go down the list. You think, Don Pepin Garcia, he'll lean on his son because his son grew up in the industry. Do you think he's going to ask a consumer what should be next? No. And it's the outsourcing of cigars is a cool idea. But, I'm jaded. I told you this numerous times. I've become jaded in the industry. I look at that and I go, all right, we're going to put out a press release and say it was outsourced, but how much did he have on the final decision? It makes it look like everybody's involved, but were they truly involved? And that's me looking at the glass half empty.
Right. Our next question from Tom. Well, Tom has two comments here. The first one, I'm smoking a Rocky Patel 60, great cigar. Was thinking it was his turn after all his ring kissing, is his first comment. I'll touch on that. I thought the Rocky Patel 60 was very, very good.
It was a good cigar.
It was very, very
It ranked
good.
pretty high on our top 10.
It was our number 3 cigar of the year. To be honest with you, I kind of expected to see it a lot higher on more lists, and I expected to see more number 1s with that cigar. Just that was my early feeling, and that was kind of the feeling with a couple other guys that I spoke with from the media side. I think it's great. That's a great cigar. The All Saints St. Francis, which was your cigar of the year, was made at that factory as well. So, I mean, the factory as a whole has put out some good cigars in this past year.
Yeah, the past few years they put out some great cigars. I was shocked to see 2 Fuente cigars in the top 10. I would be surprised if we see 2 Rocky cigars in the top 11. I'm kind of expecting the Rocky Patel 60 to come in at 11. It scored well on Cigar Insider, so I think it has to be considered. I'll be curious if they're willing to name Fuente 2 in the top 10. Will they have the courage to name 2 of another manufacturer in the top 25, let alone the top 11? I firmly believe it's going to be number 11 when 11 through 25 comes out tomorrow.
So I was on the Cigar Authority with you guys about a month and a half now ago. I think it was it was like November.
Yeah.
Right before Cigar of the Year season really started. It was kind of like the eve, and we had talked about that on the show of like, okay, what are my predictions, and you guys all kind of chimed in too, and that was one of the ones we talked about was Rocky Patel 60. I just, do you think, in your opinion, do you think Rocky's due?
He's 100% due. I mean, he had a number 2 cigar of the year that they named the Cuban. I think it was number 1. So he was like the number 1 cigar in the free world. I believe it was the sun-grown Maduro, maybe that was number 2.
I think it was, yeah.
So he's due, and he everything he's done in the industry. I don't want to say he deserves it based on that, but he's a guy that gives his heart and soul into the cigar industry. He had that great interview on Tucker Carlson. Love him or hate him for his politics. He got out in that 2 minutes or less every bullet point that needed to be discussed on the cigar industry. For somebody so passionate, never to have a number 1 that I can remember of aficionado, and I'm sure people in the chat room will correct me if I'm wrong, he is way past due.
Yeah, I would agree. I saw that interview multiple times, and I thought that was great. It was nice to see on such a major platform. Like you said, politics aside, on that platform, to kind of have our industry and someone like Rocky, especially Rocky's a lawyer too. For anyone who didn't know that, I mean, his roots are in law. So I mean, he understands not in just like the manufacturer, but he also understands, the legislative stuff that we deal with too. He's been a huge help to these people too. With his legal background, being able to kind of understand a lot of the other stuff that maybe not everyone understands. So he is definitely a huge part of this industry, and I would agree. I think he is due, and I think he does deserve that recognition. And especially in the last few years, some of the stuff he's been putting out, it's been even better than some of his existing stuff. He's been really putting out some winners.
And we spoke about like a cigar aficionado caters to the 90% of the cigar smokers, where online media caters to the 10% cigar smoker. And it surprises me. We named All Saints our cigar of the year, and it was we have this monthly care package with the Cigar Authority care package, where we send out 4 or 5 cigars, and it's cigars we're going to smoke on the show. And when we sent that cigar out, our chat room lit up that it was going to be Cigar of the Year. And we put out this contenders pack where our listeners and the shoppers of the store, they get a vote. And they got both the store shoppers and the online community, they got it right. That was the cigar that got the most votes. But if you look at the online media, Rocky's been getting bashed almost as much as Gurkha, and I don't understand either one. There's an ask for every seat. Just because you don't like a particular cigar, there's no reason to bash a particular cigar. So I don't get what all the Rocky hate online is, and it exists, and it's kind of disconcerting because he's a guy that every cigar smoker should get behind, just because of what he's doing for us on a daily basis.
You brought up something interesting, and I'm going to circle back to that because I want to hit this question first. Actually, Nicole, I'll let you read it.
So from Tom, wondering if the Saka Stillwell Star made a Cigar of the Year list. Is it a true cigar?
Yeah, this is a cigar that definitely has been talked a lot about. It's very unique. Barry, I'm interested to get your thoughts on the Stillwell Star.
I think this same person that named Paladin de Saka also had Stillwell Star on his list. If it wasn't him, I saw it on another list. Yes, it's a cigar. Just because it has pipe tobacco in it, if you're a purist, I get your argument, but it's a cigar. It's a polarizing cigar. Either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. I smoked all 4. Some of the 4 are really good. One of the 4 I will probably never pick up again, but it's an interesting innovation for the cigar industry because, there's only so many ways you could take Criollo, Corojo, San Vicente. The list goes on and on, but eventually you got to break out of that comfort zone and create something new, like True Estate did back in the day with Acid. Now, I'm not saying Stillwell Star and Acid are in the same category, but the innovation was a really cool idea. And some people will love it, some people will hate it. 3 out of the 4 I'll smoke again. So, yeah, it's good for the industry. It's worthy of consideration for some people on their list. I don't think it's available enough to really warrant a conversation that it should be on somebody's list. But if it shows up on a list, I will understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. What I wanted to circle back to was you made a comment about how like Rocky's getting like kind of roped in with Gurkha, with kind of like the bashing. I'll leave Rocky out of this for a second. I'll go with Gurkha first. In your opinion, why do you think Gurkha does get such a universally bad rep? Like, it's almost like the band Nickelback, right? You know how like everyone's always hating on Nickelback?
I like Nickelback.
Yeah.
I like Nickelback. They're all right. I mean, they're not like the Rolling Stones, but I mean, they're not like horrible. My feeling with Gurkha is they have a lot of different cigars. So, I mean, I've smoked a lot of them. A lot of them, I just didn't like. I didn't think that they were just shit. I just didn't like them. A lot of them were like too tight for me, or I just feel like they weren't as complex as I was hoping. And then I've had a few that were pretty good. I liked them. But why do you think they, more than others, just get such a bad rap?
You know, some of the groups out there, they have 30, 40,000 people. You get one person chiming in, and then another person, whether they're serious or joking, chiming in, and it just becomes a running gag at the point. And, you know, maybe they fell into a degree. And there was a period of time where some of the cigars that they made might not have been stellar. But for me, it's no reason to bash. You know, I was on Light 'em Up Lounge a couple of weeks ago, and I had said on the show, if I come across a cigar I don't like, I won't review it. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it deserves somebody else's opinion. If you don't like a cigar, just move on. Go to the next post. I don't get this consistent need to bash brands, to bash stores, to bash people. It just makes no sense to me, because all it does is hurt the industry in the long run.
And on that note, someone actually I saw it this week, like come up in my news feed. Someone's profiting off a "Friends Don't Let Friends Smoke Gurkha" t-shirt. I don't know if you guys came across that, but like
I saw it.
that was somewhere for sale. Someone is selling
I
that.
almost feel like it's a joke that got legs and just got carried away.
Yeah, I agree. I look. I mean, I know a lot of people may have differing opinions, and respectfully, I would say, you know, like I said before, I've smoked a bunch of them. Some of them I didn't like. Some of them I thought were pretty good. And again, it depends on who you ask. I mean, they make a lot of cigars. Their market's, you know, different than a lot of other people, and that's fine. You know, everyone has their thing. Everyone has their business model, and everyone has to kind of conduct their business what works best for them. And, you know, Barry, I know you can speak to that too, you know, being, you know, on your side of the table, you kind of know how things work on a retail side, and what certain, you know, you guys, you know, with Two Guys Smoke Shop and twoguyscigars.com, you know, you guys run your business a certain way, you know, with Dave and Ed and Jonathan and everyone over there. You guys do what works for you, and maybe other shops do it differently. It's the same with the manufacturers. You know, they do what works for them. And one of the things I wanted to ask you too is, so you mentioned Rocky. Why do you think that Rocky would be roped in with Gurkha?
You know, if you want to find a common denominator between the two, they both have a lot of different blends on the market, and maybe that's playing into it versus, you know, a guy like Skip, who has, you know, Cro-Magnon, Aquitaine, Baca, Neanderthal, and Temperance.
Yeah.
So evidently he's, you know, picking and choosing his blends, and maybe it's because they both have a lot of blends on the market. I mean, look at Rocky. He's done a lot of private label stuff. He's done the vintage 90 to 92, the Connecticut, the different edges, different sun-growns. The list goes on and on and on. I guess when your portfolio is that big, maybe you're opening yourself up to it, and maybe that's the reason they're getting it. I can honestly say I've never smoked a Rocky I didn't like that's available at brick and mortars. I don't get the bashing of any cigar company. It makes no sense.
Right. No, I agree with that. Tom asked one last question before we had to head out, which I kind of know the answer to this because we've talked about it before. Where does he see himself in 3 to 5 years?
Sarasota, Florida.
That's right.
But probably more than 3 to 5 years. I'm 52, so we're probably talking 8 to 10 years.
Okay. It's never too late.
No, I have a friend in Florida, and I've shared this with Dave, so I don't mind saying this. I have a friend in Florida who's a trust fund baby, and he's been wanting to open up a cigar store forever. And I'm hoping by the time I'm 60 to 62, I'll be living in Florida and a shop owner. And but right now I'm happy where I am. You know, I'm in New Hampshire. I got a great wife. I got a great stepdaughter who, you know, she calls me dad. I call her my daughter. Life is good right now, so I don't want to look 10 years into the future. But ideally, at some point before I move on to the next life, I want to wind up back in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great plan, especially Florida. They get nicer weather, and and cigar wise, that's one of the best states you can have a cigar shop in. So
yeah. When I go to the show on Saturday, the Cigar Authority, if you could believe the weather forecast, I'm gonna walk out of my house. It's gonna be -2 Fahrenheit. So
that's right.
Yeah, that wears on you quickly.
It does. We can speak to that ourselves. Yeah, it is definitely cold this time of year. Why don't we do our top three really quick? We'll take a little break, do something a little fun, kind of let Barry reset for a quick second. Although this is for you.
Yeah.
Our top three is brought to you once again by Room 101 Cigars. Check out the new Johnny Tobacco. Let us take you on a journey through time and space to the world Johnny Tobacco. Exclusively at Luxury Cigar Club. You're a bourbon guy, just like us.
Yep.
What are your top three? It can be daily or it can just be like all time. But the ones that you love the most. What are your top three bourbons?
All right, I'm gonna break it down like this. I'm gonna do my top three I'm gonna do my top everyday bourbon, my top chasing bourbon, and the bourbon I usually order when I go out.
Oh, okay. This is
All
gonna be
right.
interesting.
So my everyday bourbon at home is Elijah Craig Small Batch, and $25 to $30 here in New Hampshire. I think dollar for dollar, that's the best value. My favorite chasing bourbon is probably E.H. Taylor, the Colonel.
Which one?
The small batch.
The small batch.
Yeah, and I have a hard time finding it here in New Hampshire. It's a state-controlled liquor shop, and the only way you're going to find it in New Hampshire is know that they get their deliveries on Thursday and call every shop that you're willing to drive to, because it won't go on the shelf. And the only way you're going to get it is if the person on the phone tells you they have it. You can put your name on the bottle, and you have 24 hours to pick it up. I've only managed to get 2 bottles of that this year. So that's my favorite chasing bourbon. And when I go out, he's out of it right now, but I heard he just picked another barrel. And I really like the 724 Woodford Reserve barrel pick. So I'll be curious to see what the new barrel picks up. The new barrel they picked out is like, but that was my favorite when out bourbon.
So I will agree with you on that one, and I'll add another one that I think you've had and that you like. His pick of the Weller 107.
Phenomenal, but I've never been able to buy a bottle here in New Hampshire. I have never been lucky enough to get one, so it didn't make my list because of that.
You've never been able to secure a bottle of 107?
In New Hampshire, no.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, I like the 107. It's a good bourbon. In terms of the Wellers, it's not my number one, but it's very good. But when I had the 724 107, the barrel pick, I was like, whoa, this is way different.
It's good, but it's pricey.
Yeah, no, it is, but it's good. Very, very delicious. Kind of getting back to the show, though. We'll be wrapping up soon. We're almost out of time, but my mind just went blank. I had like the last portion.
You were ready to go.
I know.
Yeah.
Barry
Welcome to my world.
Barry just did it, and and it kind of, I don't know, it rubbed off onto me, I guess. No, I mean
Sure, blame the fat kid.
No, I mean we've had a lot of fun. We've covered a lot of things, a lot of interesting points too. I know that United is having a great year too, and I know that they're running, Oliver at United is running a social media contest for kind of like what people think the next firecracker is going to be. And I know you know the answer, and I know you're not going to reveal. So I'm not asking you to reveal the answer. I'm not trying to spoil their fun, but I will say, my guess to that, I think it's going to be Rocky. I've been a local to the Two Guys Smoke Shops. I've been buying there for years. I've seen a lot of the firecrackers come out over the last 5 or 6 years. But purely just based on kind of like what we talked about tonight with just the way he's been performing. And I don't think that they've ever done one with Rocky Patel, but I could see Rocky Patel doing one, and I think that it would be an interesting time for him to do that. Whether or not it's true, I don't know, but that's my guess. So I wanted to.
I can tell you it's not going to be Rocky Patel.
Oh,
so we
really?
Can scratch him off the list. But a missile firecracker, that would be pretty cool. The Edge missile. A torpedo with a fuse tip. Visually, I think that would be different and pretty cool. But no, it's not Rocky Patel. But I'm really looking forward to this year's Firecracker. And if you want to know who it is, you got to tune into the Cigar Authority this weekend, Saturday at 12 noon. Available on YouTube, Facebook, and thecigarauthority.com. And we will reveal who's making the 2022 Firecracker limited edition.
See what I did there? Nice little soft toss for the promo. Always looking out for our buddies at the Cigar Authority.
It's called a segue.
That's right. They're always helping out the Cigar Authority. You know, you guys have been great to me. Love you guys to death. Love the show. It's always a great time, whether I'm watching or the few times I've gotten to come on with you guys. It's always a blast. So, always looking out for you guys. What are you most excited about, cigar-wise, for this year?
Last year at this time, there were a few press releases of stuff that was going to be released at TPE. And, we know Supreme Leaf is going to make its debut for 2022 at TPE. So that's obviously on my list. Rainier Lorenzo posted something today that he was blending the cigar El Titan de Bronze down in Miami in Calle Ocho. As a fan of Sandy and that shop, producing some really good boutique cigars. They did the Goldie from La Polina back in the day, with the fantail cap. So I'm looking forward to seeing what spin he could put on with the tobacco that they use at that boutique manufacturer. So that's on my list. Other than that, manufacturers haven't really put too much out there. The St. Francis, Colorado, I'm looking forward to trying. But I would say the two things I'm looking forward to trying in 2022 that are not out yet would be the new Supreme Leaf size and the HVC cigar being made at Titan de Bronze if it comes out.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I think you made a good point. I wanted to ask because it's always interesting, especially this time of the year with the limited information that's available. But yeah, I mean, I agree, and especially with Aganorsa, that Supreme Leaf line has been great the last few years. We've really enjoyed it, and they've done pretty well with that. So I'm excited to see the next iteration of that, and HVC too, which also is from that factory. Even though this will be a little different, but they just as a whole as a company, they've done really well themselves. I mean, they did a Black Friday firecracker with you guys. Their hot cake was the Gran Cañon size. That was number 10 on our list. The hot cake was one of my favorites that they've ever made.
I'm not a fan of the 60, but the hot cake Gran Cañon, the best in that line. As much as I do not like smoking a big ring gauge cigar, best cigar in that line is the 60. Put away any misconceptions. If you have it, give it a try. I'm going to get myself in trouble now. I've gone like an hour and whatever without getting myself in trouble. So if you look at Don Pepin Garcia, he used to make his cigars with Aganorsa leaf. That's who he got his start with. If the Fernandez family was making his cigars, and then out of that came Pete Johnson. Well, now you got Aganorsa taking a new kid into the fold and helping build him up in Rainier Lorenzo. Rainier Lorenzo is the next Tatuaje.
That's a very bold statement. That's very interesting. The next Tatuaje. I mean, I could see. I mean, he's off to a great start.
I think he surpassed them already.
You think that?
I think
Lorenzo's passed.
I think he's
Pete
putting
Johnson?
out better stuff. Yes.
Interesting. That's an interesting comment to make.
I told you I'd get myself in trouble. This is the get in trouble moment.
We should have had a contest where it was like, how long does the show go before Barry gets in trouble? Could have been a drinking game. Could have been a contest. I'm sure in the comments and people who listen to it and watch it later will chime in too, and I'll be sure to share that with you too, so you know.
Please do.
I will. It'll be fun. So yeah, no. There's a lot of exciting stuff that's yet to be announced to look forward to for the year. Last year was a fun year, interesting year. 2021 officially, it was an interesting year. Won't say good or bad.
I'm going to call it a disappointing cigar year. You know,
Yeah.
there was maybe 4 or 5 great cigars that stood out, and for you it was Undercrown 10 that stood out. For me and the rest of the Cigar Authority, it was All Saints, St. Francis that stood out. But there weren't a lot of new releases last year that really stood out. And I'm hoping 2022 changes that. But if the factories are struggling in the first 6 months like we all expect them to be, I don't. I think 2022 could have even less new releases than 2021 had,
Yeah.
and that would be frustrating because the majority. And I'm going to blame our media component for this because we're always posting what's shipping, what's coming, so everybody's learned to ask what's new. And I think 2022 we should all make the effort to ask what's smoking good because I don't think there's going to be enough new releases to keep people happy.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, 2020. Oh, well, really, 2020. The was really the beginning of the shakeup of the industry. 2021, I think, was the fallout from 2020, and I think 2022 will be the fallout of 2021, and it'll just be this few year. I think it'll carry on for a few years. It'll be like this domino effect that completely has just shaken the bottle up. Like that bottle of soda, you shake it up, you open it, it bursts out. That's really the industry right now. There's so many exterior factors, internal factors that have affected a lot of things, and it basically boils down to that. It's new stuff coming out, and then it's the quality of what's coming out. Some factories, they want to rush things out. They want to get things out. You go after the Fuente family motto, which is we'll never rush the hands of time, and they've kind of stuck to that. And just I don't care how the demand is, we want our product to be good. Saka's demonstrated that as well. It's some of the things that he's talked about on social media. He's really in tune with people online. It'll be interesting to see kind of who does what and who kind of pivots from the challenges that they have faced the last couple of years. Because there will be a bleeding effect from that. Whether it's good or bad, it'll depend on the manufacturer, but it's definitely to come. And I think this year will be.
And also that
No, go ahead.
that proverbial coin that's flipping, if it ever stops flipping and it lands on the wrong side, that could be the end of new releases. So it's time to start paying attention to what's smoking good. And if you go to a good brick and mortar retailer, they'll know what in their humidor is smoking good. If you shop at a good online store and you don't click the button and you actually call them and speak to them, they could tell you what's smoking good. And there's some stuff that's been on the market for 4, 5, 10 years, if not longer, that is smoking phenomenal that people have forgotten about because they're asking what's new.
Absolutely.
I think the new question is, what haven't you tried?
Yeah.
That
good one.
too.
Yeah, that's a good one too. The last question we have for you actually comes from Bruce Stark. Is the Cigar Authority going to do another blind tasting program like they did before?
So Andix, he's on our chat room as Andix, so that's actually a good question. The way the FDA is currently written, to remove a cigar band and put a new cigar band, be it A, B, C, or D, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that's now considered manufacturing. So due to the FDA regulations, it's difficult to do a blind tasting like that. So I don't think that's something that will happen, but we'll consult and we'll find out if there is a way to do it. Bruce Stark isn't the only person who has asked it. If there's a way around it, we'll find it. But right now, as of January 14th, I think it is, or 13th, the 13th, there is nothing set in stone or in the pipeline for the immediate future, 3 or 4 months out.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Actually, I'm going to add one more question in.
All right, Columbo.
I'm gonna add one more in. In terms of retail, and at Two Guys Smoke Shop, Dave kind of touched upon this on the show last weekend. For those who maybe didn't see that, what's really selling good right now? Like what's hot? What's really popular in the store and online that everyone's really kind of going after?
Aganorsa Supreme Leaf is really popular right now. The new Garofalo La Familia is really popular, specifically in the sun-grown line. And if you're a fan of Perdomo, these cigars are made at Perdomo, exclusively for David Garofalo and United Cigars. Since January 1st, they've started keeping a track of what I've been smoking online. I want to know how many cigars I smoke in the course of the year. The way it's going right now, I might have to take the link off my Facebook page because my wife's going to be like, you spent that much money on cigars? But since the beginning of the year, I probably smoked it every 2 or 3 days. I'm still a huge fan in the Nestor Miranda Special Selection.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's moving really, really well. Rojas Blue Bonnet's moving really well, and of course, since we named it Cigar of the Year, All Saints St. Francis is moving really, really well. So those are probably some of the top sellers right now at twoguyscigars.com.
Yeah, those are some great cigars too. I mean, that's a pretty good lineup.
Even just the first one, that Supreme Leaf. We got a box of last year's release, I believe, right?
Yeah, we got the torpedo.
Yeah, the torpedoes.
Yeah.
And
if I said Supreme Leaf, my bad. I meant to say Rare Leaf. You can't find it. Yeah, you can't find the Supreme Leafs now. We were just talking about the Supreme Leafs. But I know those will be coming sometime in February, probably.
And those are great.
Yeah, those are
phenomenal.
I never had the first because they're on their it'll be their 4th release this year.
Of what? The Rare Leaf? Oh, Supreme Leaf.
Supreme Leaf.
I think
5th.
I think it's 5th. Yeah.
So I mean, I've only had the last 2 years worth, but they were great. I had to buy a box every time. So
I've had all of them. My favorite so far has been the Toro. I thought that one was really good.
Toro. I like the Torpedo Bellicoso, whichever one they called it, and I'm looking forward to this year, which is Corona Gorda, is it, or what? Corona Gorda was a couple years ago, but regardless, every year, every release has been fire. So I'm looking forward to this year's release. And the only thing that sucks about it is, I think the maximum you can get is 10 per shop. So you look at twoguyscigars.com. We have 3 retail shops and the online entity. So those 10 boxes only go so far. I wish they would at least double the production, but I understand keeping it limited.
Yeah, absolutely. We're running out of time, so I'm gonna start to wrap it up here. I want to just kind of plug really quickly. Spare Note Show, it's back again. It has been 2 weeks. This Saturday night, you can find Coop and myself, the Spare Note Show. It's gonna be a pretty interesting show. It might be a long show, so buckle up and get ready. And then, of course, who knows what Coop's gripe of the week is. So I'm sure, and he'll be talking about cigar gripes and then football gripes. We can all thank the New York Giants organization for firing Joe Judge, because not for the sake of the team, but so that William Cooper can now shut up about Joe Judge. And I say that with love, Coop. I do. The Cigar Family Charitable Foundation Smokin Tabacco fundraiser kicks off once again this year, May 1st on our March 1st.
March 1st.
Sorry, March 1st. Right here on the show, we'll begin that. We'll have another round of awesome things that we're going to raffle off to raise money for the Cigar Family Charitable Foundation. Last year, we were able to raise over $7,000, which was really impressive, and we thank everyone who was involved in that. Barry, I know you already kind of plugged this weekend's show with the Cigar Authority. The Firecracker will be unveiled this weekend on the show.
Yeah, and also be Dave's annual State of the Cigar Industry address. Where have we been? Where are we going? And then next weekend, after a week from Saturday, Steve Saka's going to be on the show, and he's going to answer the question, how much does it really cost to get into the cigar industry?
Ooh, that'll be a good episode.
Everybody wants to come out with their own brand. He's going to tell you how much capital you need to do just that.
That'll be interesting. And on that note, next week we have Sin and Josh Coburn, who just bought Dissident Cigars, coming on.
Yes.
And they just bought them, I think, in December. So new acquisition for them. And they'll be on next week's show.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about them and kind of who they are. They're definitely a newer face to a lot of people in the industry, as well as the consumers. So we'll get to know them a little bit more, and a little bit more about the brand, and kind of what their plans are with that brand and where they see themselves going with it. So that'll be a really fun show, so don't miss that one. Don't forget, as always, to like and subscribe. whether you listen at home on the podcast or you're watching us on social media or on video. We love you and appreciate you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, don't forget to go to smokintabacco.com for more news and content and stories and stuff like that. And with that, that's going to be our show for the week. Barry,
Boom.
thank you so much for being with us tonight. It was a pleasure to have you. We covered a lot of good ground, and this was fun. We should do it again.
I appreciate that. And if you would allow me, I'd like to dedicate this show to my father-in-law, who
Yes.
passed away today at 2:30. So I'd like to dedicate this show in his memory. Hank Beliveau, thank you for giving me the wife
I don't have whiskey.
that I
but
never deserved.
yeah, our thoughts are with you and Heidi right now. And again, we send our condolences and our love
Thank
Yeah.
you.
to you guys right now. I know it's a really difficult time for you guys personally. So, our thoughts and prayers are with you, as always. But that's gonna do it for us. It was a great show. We had a lot of fun, a lot of ground covered. I'm gonna cover even more on the Spare Note show on Saturday night, so don't miss it. All right, guys, take care.
All right. Bye.